Hey guys, my name is Kirsty and welcome to my October wrap-up video. So I'm doing this really quick because I have an hour and a half before I need to go to work. I haven't had a chance to film my October wrap-up yet because I've been ill and I've been doing assessments. So this is the only time where I have a chance to do it until it's too late. I read a total of 9 books in October, which I am pretty proud of, considering that I had a lot going on. Some of these are for university, so there's a little bit of cheating, but hey, I still read them. I'm just gonna kick off and start this now, so this video isn't too long for you. The first book that I read in October was The Castles of Athlean and Dunbayne by Anne Radcliffe, and this was for university for my Gothic module. It's only short, it's literally like 110 pages, so it didn't take me long at all. I did quite enjoy it. I think I gave it a 3.5 out of 5, but basically this is a novella about these two castles and they are constantly at war with each other. And like true Gothic novels, this explores family, hidden identities, secret passageways and tunnels, prisons, and I just thought it was really interesting how Anne Radcliffe explored so many different types of characters and what they were going through in such a short amount of space. It's not as good as other Gothic novels, I will admit. It doesn't seem to have that much kick to it, which is a shame, but it still had a really good underlying story and I did care for the characters, which is always a good sign. The second book that I had to read for university, again for the Gothic module, was The Monk by Matthew Lewis. This is a very dark book. I think I gave this a 3.75. Yes, I am getting that specific. It wasn't a 4, but it wasn't a 3.5. It's like leaning more towards the 4. The only reason I didn't give this its 4 stars was because it was just very slow in places. Like there's a whole 100 pages where you're given a backstory of one of the characters, and I was just sat on the train on the way back from university like, okay, come on, hurry up, like I just want to get to the actual story. But it is very dark and gritty. There's a lot of adult content in here. There's rape, so trigger warnings for that. I don't know how to describe it. It's just really dark, disturbing. Loads of people who I've spoken to who have read this book said that they really didn't like it and they found it boring. And I can kind of see where they're coming from, but then on the other sense, it's like so much happens. There's so much murder and people kind of going a bit crazy and going on rampages, and it is quite weird. I mean, I do recommend it, I do. Just be wary of the 100 pages towards the middle that just give you nonsense backstory. But yeah, it follows the monk. He's indulging in his sexual passions, and because he's going against his religion, he starts to go insane and he starts killing people to hide the fact what he's doing. So if someone finds out what he's doing, he kills them. That's it, like they're gone. Each time he kills someone or he gets pulled into seduction, he goes even more crazy, and at the end, I'm not going to give that away for you, but he gets his comeuppance at the end. This is quite a hefty book. This is like 450 pages, and it did take me quite a while to read it because of the language that was used, but I do recommend it. The third book that I read this month, and again this was for the Gothic module at university, was Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. Yeah, these are all the tabs in the book that I had to do for my essay. If you don't know what Jane Eyre is about, Jane Eyre, we follow her through her childhood and into adulthood. She's always been oppressed by either her step family or by men in her life, and it's about her trying to break out of these moulds. And when she becomes an adult, we follow her. She becomes a mistress at Thornfield Hall to a man named Mr. Rochester. Slowly and surely these two characters fall in love. There's this big kind of secret that I'm not going to share with you. Every now and then Jane Eyre will hear wailings in the house and she thinks it's haunted, and you find out what all of that is towards the end of the book. So it is a gothic story in a different sense. It's definitely got a more of a romantic element to it, and the element of a woman trying to find her way in a man's world. She's definitely oppressed by the patriarchal society, and it's about her breaking out of that and figuring out who she is as a person. But no, this is definitely a really good book. I've been meaning to read it for absolutely ages, but I've never just had the motivation to read it. So when I realised that I had to read it for class, obviously I had no choice, I had to read it. So I'm glad that doing the Gothic module has given me the chance to read this now. I'm going to give it a 4.5 out of 5, just because there were some chapters that just seemed a bit slow. It didn't feel like they were actually needed. This is a book that I listened to on audiobook. I didn't read it physically, and that is the Amber Spyglass by Philip Pullman. So I have listened to all of the Northern Lights books now on audiobook. I just have to read the Book of Dust. I do have the hardcover copy there, but I am thinking about getting it on audiobook as well, just so I can listen to it while I'm going to work or doing chores or whatever. I am going to give this a 3.75 out of 5. Not the 4, because again, same as Jane Eyre, there were just some chapters in here that I didn't think were needed. It is a 550 page novel, and I definitely think that 100 pages of that weren't needed to make the storyline more concise and to stop the rambling in times. But other than that, it's a really good book. It was a good ending to the trilogy. I did actually grow to like the character of Will. At first I really didn't like him, but as this book progressed, I started to understand why he was like he was, and I kind of gained some respect for him. I liked the character of Lyra and Will together, sort of. I still have a bit of problems with how Lyra's character developed, because in the first book she was very independent, she wanted to do everything herself, and then when she met Will she was very dependent on Will. So I was just like, well, you know, she was very independent in the first book, and now she meets a guy and she relies on the guy for everything, and I really didn't like that. But she definitely becomes like her old self in the first book again in this one. Yeah, 3.75 out of 5. It was a great ending to a trilogy. I definitely recommend the audiobooks. It's got a full cast and Philip Pullman himself narrates it. The next book that I listened to on audiobook was Hunting Prince Dracula by Kerry Maniscalco. I cannot speak enough of these books. So this is the second book in the series. The first book was Stalking Jack the Ripper, and that was just fantastic. I absolutely love Kerry Maniscalco's writing. I love the characters in the book. I just love everything about it. And again, the audiobooks for these two books are really good. They are narrated by Nicola Barber, I think. She does such a wonderful job of creating the atmosphere that goes on within these books and of portraying the characters' personalities. And I did really love this one. I don't know if I preferred this one over to the first one, I'm not sure, but because it's the second book, it gave more room and time for character development. We got to see more of the relationship between Audrey Rose and Thomas Cresswell. Because obviously I listened to the audiobook, I didn't know that these things were in here, but every now and then, they're in the physical edition, that is, there are some little documents here. So that's like letters, and then there's also pictures accompanying the book as well here. I definitely think it's interesting, and I really want to give it a reread as well. And it's floppy, which is great as well. There is going to be a third book, so I cannot wait for that, because I am obsessed. I'm absolutely obsessed with this series. I have nothing but good things to say about it. So definitely, if you haven't already read these, I recommend them with all of my heart. They are brilliant. The next book I read was It Only Happens in the Movies by Holly Bourne, and I actually had the opportunity to meet Holly Bourne at the Birmingham Waterstones. It was just great to meet her, because she's just a fab author. I love how she always kind of gives a feminist twist to things, And this book is about a character named Audrey. She's been through this really bad breakup and she thinks, well, all the romance in life, it never happens the way it does in the movies, and she gets really pessimistic about romance and relationships because they never go right for her. And she meets this guy called Harry in her new job at the cinema, and they kind of hit it off and they start talking, and it's just about Audrey finding herself with her friends, with these new groups of friends that she's made. With Harry, there's like a developing friendship and romance there, and we get to follow her journey through that. And I think it's really good. There's also loads of great movie references in this book, and it was great because I've watched most of the movies, so I could totally see where the character of Audrey was coming from when she referenced a movie. I will buy anything that Holly Bourne writes because she's just a great author and I love every single book that she's ever written. And the penultimate book that I read in the month of October was The Invisible Library by Genevieve Cogman, and I had to read this for the Waterstones book club that I go to every month. And this is a tricky one. I don't really know what to rate this book because as I was reading it, I enjoyed it, but then when I finished the book and I looked back, there was a lot of elements in the book where I was just like, that wasn't that great, or that didn't work well, or there's a lot of problems with that kind of portion of the book. I'm going to give this a 3 out of 5 because I don't know where I sit with it. I am going to read the second and third book in it, but I don't know. But this book is, see, this is where it gets really difficult because it's really hard to explain what this book is about because there's so many elements of it. So I'm going to try as hard as I can to try and explain what this book is about. So we have this character of Irene, and she works in this invisible library, and it's kind of like a multiverse novel. So there's a lot of alternative universes, parallel worlds, stuff like that. And the librarians who work in this invisible library have to go to these alternative worlds to find books that don't belong in that world. Irene is sent on a task to go to this alternate world where there is a copy of the Grimm's fairy tales that has a story at the end that tells the public what the invisible library is. And obviously the library doesn't want that sort of information to get out to the public because it would just mess up the whole kind of, it's like a butterfly effect, so it would mess up the whole world. So the library sends Irene and an accomplice with her called Kai. They go to this alternate world to try and retrieve this Grimm's fairy tales book, and along the way they discover fairies, dragons, there are alligators that burst into a ballroom and kill people. There's giant iron centipedes that run through the town. It's just crazy. There's craziness everywhere, and that's why it's so hard to explain what this book is about, because essentially the world that they go to is a world of chaos. There's just everything that you could imagine. There's vampires, werewolves. It was a good read whilst I was reading it, but on reflection there is stuff that didn't really make sense. It was an interesting read, and like I said before, I am going to read the second book, which is The Masked City, and the third book, which is The Burning Page. I am going to read them just to carry on the story and find out what happens with the characters. But no, I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. And the last book that I read in the month of October was Shadow House by Dan Pawlowski. And it's Shadow House book number 1, and it's called The Gathering. I read this because it was Halloween and I wanted a kind of scary read, obviously. And this is a very short book. It's 215 pages. And what's interesting about this book is that there's an app to go along with it. It says here, it's got the information that you need about the app there. So what you do is you go on the App Store, you download the Scholastic Shadow House app. And what it is that whilst you are reading the book, you'll come across sigils like this, and you will trace those into the app, and it will give you background information on the characters. And it's kind of like a game where the choices you make throughout the game affect the story and what happens. At first I thought that the sigils, because they are shown on the pictures in the book, so here's a picture of the Shadow House, and I don't know if you can see there, but there is a kind of sigil there, and I thought that that sigil kind of gave you some information about the house or the hauntings that was going on within the house, but it's actually a game. Just go into the app knowing that it's a game and not background information about the pictures. But apart from that, this book was amazing. The layout of the book is really cool as well, because you've got pictures and then the normal layout of the book looks like this. So it looks like the pages are burnt around the edges and the actual pages are grey. But we follow these characters called Dash, Dylan, Poppy, Marcus and Azumi, and they are all called to the shadow house for different reasons. When they get to the shadow house, they're trapped inside, they can't get out, the hallways move, people go disappearing, there's ghosts and everything like that. So these young children, they're about 12, they're stuck in this house and they try and work together to find out what's going on and what the hauntings are. I devoured this book. I thought it was so good, and it was just brilliantly written, and it scared me. So I think for a middle grade child who's, I don't know, 9 to 12 maybe, they will definitely get creeped out by this book, and I think it would make a really good movie as well. But this is a trilogy. The second one is called You Can't Hide, and the third one, I don't know if it's out yet, but there is a third one as well, and I have read the second one, but that will be in my November wrap up because I read it at the beginning of November. I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5, and I really enjoyed it. I'm so annoyed with myself. I packed all my camera equipment away, my tripod, all the books, and then I realised that there's one more book that I read during the month of October that I haven't told you about. So the final book, and it is the actual final book now, that I read during October was Beauty Queens by Libba Bray. This book is about a plane full of beauty queens and they crash land on an island, and it's about them surviving. So think Miss Congeniality cross Lost, and you have beauty queens. The thing about this book was that it's very satirical, so it's kind of taken the mick out of the patriarchal society and how women are seen within society. They're seen as weak. Beauty queens are seen as fake and all of that, and this book really delves into the different characters of the beauty queens and how they're perceived, what they're actually like, what they do to survive in the jungle, and it's about them coming together and figuring out how to survive and the journeys that they go on along the way as well. During the first half of the book you might think, oh god, this is so cheesy and rubbish and bad, but bear with it because it does get better, and you do start to understand the sense of humour that Libba Bray is going for during this novel. She's using humour to try and make readers see what women have to go through on a daily basis just to be taken seriously by the rest of the world. I listened to this on audiobook. I don't have the physical copy, but I'm going to give this a 3.75 out of 5. I think the beginning was quite slow, which is why it didn't get the 4 or 5 out of 5. I didn't like a few of the characters, but apart from those couple of things, it was a really enjoyable read. And it was really strange because I'm not used to listening to audiobooks with like the narrator being American and having the American accent. So listening to Libba Bray actually narrate her own audiobook was quite interesting. And that is it for my October wrap up. Like I said before, I read 9 books in the month of October, which I'm actually quite pleased about because I had a lot going on as well during that month. But no, what books did you read in October? Let me know in the comments below because I'm very interested to see what you guys read as well. And if you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up. If you've got any comments, questions, feedback, anything like that, leave it in the comments box below and I will get back to you. I do post videos every Monday, Tuesday and Friday, but that is subject to change because I have a lot going on, I have a lot of assessments. And if you do want notifications for when those new videos go up, just click on the bell icon below and you will receive notifications for when I post a new video. If you've got any reviews for these books, I will link the review down below as well for you, so you can check out more in-depth thoughts on them. And yeah, that is all I have to say. So thank you for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!